In a quiet corner of the village of Willow Creek,
Is this
nestled amongst the
possible?
greenery, lived a young woman named Alara. Though beautiful, she was deeply lonely. In her small cottage, she gave shelter to a wild monkey, making him her friend and companion. But she had no idea that the creature she had welcomed into her home would change her life forever. Within a few months, a new life began to grow within her, and the villagers started to whisper and mock her. Alara remained silent, for she knew a truth that no one would believe. She had never been touched by another person. Was the child truly the monkey's, or was there another secret hidden in the forest? This is Alara's story. Her small mud brick cottage stood at the edge of the village. Her life was simple. Her world was limited to the guava orchard left to her by her parents, who were lost to a great flood many years ago. Since then, her only faithful companion had been her own resilience. Every morning, as the first light of dawn touched Willow Creek, Alara would begin her day with a moment of quiet reflection. Then, with her delicate hands, she would walk the paths of her orchard, picking ripe guavas and filling her baskets. She would take them to the village market to sell, where people knew her simply as Alara of the Guavas. The villagers would often talk in hushed tones. They would say her guavas were sweet, but her own life was without joy. Alara was used to these whispers and never complained. She had no friends or family to share her burdens with. Only her garden and the deep silence of the night, where she would speak her heart's troubles to the quiet dark, wishing for her loneliness to become her strength. One day, as Alara was picking guavas, with the sun's golden rays spilling to branches, her eyes fell upon a monkey. It was no ordinary animal. It wasn't mischievous or noisy. It sat peacefully on a thick branch, looking at her with a strange innocence in its eyes, as if it held a deep secret. At first, her heart trembled with fear. She picked up a dry branch and shouted, "Go away! Don't ruin my garden. This is how I make my living." But the monkey didn't move. It simply lowered its gaze, as if it knew it was not at fault. Alara gathered her courage and slowly stepped closer. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone still harsh. The only response was silence. After a moment, her anger faded. She spoke softly. "Fine, but you must not steal my guavas. This orchard is a trust, and I must protect it." That day, the monkey didn't run away. It sat quietly in a corner like a guest. When Alara returned the next morning, it was in the same spot, just as silent. This time, Alara wasn't scared but surprised. "You came back again," she said with a gentle smile. "You must like my garden very much." She took a few ripe guavas from her basket and placed them near the monkey. "Here, you can have these." But no mischief. The monkey ate the fruit quietly, its eyes fixed on Alara, as if offering thanks. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Every morning, the monkey would be there. It never caused trouble. Sometimes, it would climb the highest branches and drop down guavas for her, as if it were helping.
Possible?
Other times, it would sit before her with a hand outstretched, as if asking, "Where's my share for today?" She began talking to it, as if it were her closest friend. "My mother was quiet, just like you," she'd say. The monkey would listen, sometimes nodding its head, sometimes taking a deep breath. She found a strange peace in its company. She decided to name him Jip, for the spark of light and intelligence she saw in his eyes. One day, as heavy rain began to fall, Alara ran towards her cottage. She looked back and saw Jip still sitting alone in the garden, his sad face getting soaked. Her heart ached. She ran back and called out, "Why didn't you come with me? Come home. Everyone deserves shelter." Jip silently followed her. From that day on, the loneliness in Alara's cottage began to fade. "Jip, time to eat. Jip, let's go to the market." Her life had found a new, happy rhythm. The villagers were shocked. Some laughed. "Alara has gone mad," whispering to a monkey. Others would taunt her openly. "What's this? Friendship with an animal now." But Alara paid them no mind. She was content, and in her quiet moments, she felt a deep gratitude for the friend she had found. One cold night, as Alara lay on her cot, with the wind howling outside, she looked over at Jip, who was watching her from a corner. His eyes were moist, as if holding a profound secret. Ilara mumbled in her sleepiness. You will always be with me, won't you, Jip? You were sent to me. He seemed to nod lightly, and she drifted off to sleep. But that night, something was about to change forever. As winter set in, Ilara began to feel unwell. A deep fatigue settled into her bones, and the smile vanished from her lips. A fever and weakness confined her to her bed. Jip never left her side. He would fetch cool, damp cloths for her forehead, and sometimes bring back fruit he'd found in the market. Though her breathing was faint, her heart was at ease, knowing someone was there to care for her. One moonlit night, after she had recovered, Ilara sat in her courtyard with Jip. She hugged him and said, You brought light into my life. Promise you will never leave. Jip placed a hand on her cheek, his eyes trying to say something words could not. Ilara soon fell into a deep sleep. In the darkest part of the night, when all of Willow Creek was silent, Jip came closer. He moved like a human. He placed a hand on Ilara's forehead, and then he did something she would not realize until much later. When morning came, Ilara's body felt heavy, as if she had been on a long journey. She dismissed it, her heart full of trust for her friend. But after a few months, strange changes began in her body. One day at the market, she fainted. An old midwife from the village, Maeve, was called to check on her. Maeve looked at Ilara's eyes, took her pulse, and then said softly, Child, you are going to be a mother. The word struck Ilara like a physical blow. How is that possible? I have never even been touched by a man. Maeve simply said, Destiny writes stories beyond our understanding. A storm of questions raged in Ilara's heart. Whose child is this? Her eyes fell on Jip, sitting quietly, looking at her with those same innocent eyes. Her heart shattered. Was it you? She whispered, her voice trembling. Jip simply bowed his head. Get out, she screamed. Get out of my house. You deceive me. Jip left quietly, but every night he would return to sit by the door of her hut and cry. The people of Willow Creek were merciless. The guava seller's child is no father, some sneered. She has ruined her own honor, others said. Ilara locked her door, but the taunts tore through the walls. She spent her nights crying, asking the darkness what she had done to deserve this. Her heart doubted Jip, but then she would remember his innocent eyes. He came to her door every day, sitting quietly with his head bowed. One day, she went to the door. Did you do this to me? She asked, her voice breaking. Jip said nothing, but closed his eyes and bowed his head again. Her grief turned to fire. Get out of my life. You ruined me, she screamed, throwing water at him and chasing him away with a stick. But he came back the next day, and the next, the village elders gathered. This girl is a disgrace, they declared. They sent a message, name the father or be cast out of the village. Ilara stood before them, silent. How could she tell a truth no one would believe? Meanwhile, Jip was wasting away. He refused to eat or drink. His fur was falling out, and he had become a weak, thin shadow of himself. It seemed he wanted to say, Forgive me, but Ilara's heart had turned to stone. One night, as the moon was hidden behind the clouds, a stranger arrived in Willow Creek. He was an old mystic, with kind eyes and a face that held great wisdom. He walked directly to Ilara's hut. Daughter, he said, I have come to tell you something that will change your destiny. Ilara opened the door. What is it? The mystic took a deep breath. The creature you know as a monkey is no animal. He is a prince. Years ago, he betrayed a powerful sorceress, and in her rage, she cursed him, turning him into a monkey. Only the true affection of a woman who loved him without knowing his identity could break the spell. That woman was you. Ilara's eyes widened. What are you saying? He was a monkey. I took him in. The mystic bowed his head. Daughter, what happened that night was a final key to breaking his curse. He loves you, which is why he never left your door. It was the will of the fates that you would become his salvation. Ilara's breath grew heavy. Her heart pounded. She opened the door and looked at the spot where Jip always sat. But it wasn't Jip. A handsome young man stood there, wearing a simple white robe. His face was bright, and his eyes were filled with tears. In a soft voice, he said, Ilara, it's me. I am your Jip. She stared, stunned. "You," she barely managed to whisper. "You ruined my life." The young man, a prince named Aiden, fell to his knees. "I know I hurt you. It was never my choice. You were the only person who showed me love when I was an animal. Now that I am human, I cannot lose you. My love for you is true." Ilara's heart was in a storm. She looked into his eyes and saw the same innocence she had seen in Gyp's. Silently, she returned to her hut and spent the night reflecting, seeking guidance from the silence within. The next morning, Willow Creek was in an uproar. A handsome young man stood at Ilara's door. The old mystic gathered the villagers and told them the entire story. The women who had taunted Ilara now bowed their heads in shame. The men avoided her gaze. Ilara looked at them all. "You caused me great pain," she said, her voice clear and strong. "But I asked for no apology. Destiny has returned my love to me." A few days later, Ilara and Aiden were married in a simple ceremony. The same villagers who had scorned her now came to offer their blessings. "You freed me from a curse," Aiden said, holding her hand. "I will devote my life to you." Tears streamed down Ilara's face, but this time they were tears of joy. A few months later, she gave birth to a beautiful child, a symbol of their unique love, sacrifice, and forgiveness. The child of a once-shamed mother was now celebrated by all. Aiden and Ilara continued to live in a small cottage, but it was no longer filled with loneliness. It was filled with love. One evening, as the setting sun cast an orange glow on the guava trees, Aiden sat with her child in his lap. He said softly, "You saved me from loneliness and freed me from a curse. We will be together always." Ilara held his hand and smiled, as the laughter of their child made the moment perfect. In the small village of Willow Creek, their story became a legend, an example of how, sometimes, even the deepest loneliness can be turned into the brightest light.